Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for your patience. We're getting everyone situated. As I mentioned, if you are at a table that does not have a designated host, so if no one can identify themselves as a host, please go ahead and find a different table. Also, if their table is labeled as closed, please do not go to that table. Find one that has a tree species listed. So that will be helpful when we go back to the table view. So right now, we're just going to give everyone a welcome. Welcome, Lafayette. Thank you so much for coming. We're so glad to see you back at this third workshop, 3 of 4. I'm going to introduce Ben, and then we'll introduce who's our technical support for the evening. And then we'll introduce Chair Lee, who's the chair for the General Plan Advisory Committee. I'll go over a brief explanation and background information about what we're doing and the activity. Go ahead and get started.
Great. So thanks, everyone. Yeah, my name is Ben. I'm here to help out with tech support for the evening. So first of all, we're in Remo, which is a new platform that's really good for small group conversations like the workshop. So right presentation mode where you can only see me and Sarah. You cannot speak. You're automatically muted. But once we end the presentation, you'll be back on the floor. And then there's going to be a small circle, like a dot, that represents you. It'll have your first initial on it or a picture of your face if you uploaded a profile picture. And that table that you're at, you'll be able to see who else is there. That's like a private, small video conversation where you'll be for most of the entire workshop. At the end, we'll come back to presentation mode. We'll call people on stage and kind of hear about what you did in the workshop. But that's most of what you need to know. The big things that, if something's not working right, make sure you're not using Safari as an internet browser. That's the main browser that can have trouble on Remo. Secondly, if something just seems a little off, you can always try refreshing. And then finally, feel free to give me a call. Paste my phone number in the chat. Give me a call if you're having an issue, and I'd be happy to help you out, see what I can do. So that's pretty much most of the tech stuff you need to know. If you have any questions, happy to help you out one-on-one. Back to you, Sarah.
Great. So I'm going to bring Chris Lee on stage, and she will do a brief introduction about the General Plan Advisory Committee.
Hi, everyone. I'm not really in Hawaii, although I wish I was. Welcome to our third session. For me, this is the one I've really been looking forward to. We're actually going to be budgeting housing tonight as a group. I will be listening, and as a table host, and all table hosts will be listening and answering questions where needed. But you will be, as a group, determining where you would like to see housing in the downtown area of Lafayette. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll submit the information that each table has come up with, and it will be collated into one big response, and then we'll review that at the end of our session. Thank you.
Great. So I'm going to go ahead and do a short presentation to give some background information. So as I mentioned, we're at our third workshop. Just a little bit about how we got here, what today's topic is, what we want to accomplish, and what that process looks like. So we have been all California jurisdictions. All California jurisdictions are required to have a general plan, which is essentially the blueprint for the city. We have been embarking on this update since late last year, and we are starting with the housing element primarily because there are time constraints associated with it, but just wanted to give you some resources that are available to you. PlanLafayette.org is the main hub for all the information as it relates to the general plan, as well as more specifically the housing element. So the tabs that are super helpful are the housing element specifically, and then also the Get Involved tab as well. We have been going through an informational phase, so we have sent out many flyers and postcards and hosted several Housing 101 workshops. We've produced a walking tour and provided a lot of background information, all of which is on the website. And now we're moving and sort of transitioning into our public input phase. And so this is where the workshops come in, and we're asking for your input in the process. It is a public process. There are a lot of factors that go into a final recommendation. We have things to consider from state law, and as well as public input and all the background information, and environmental analysis as well. So all of those things will go into the General Plan Advisory Committee's recommendation to the Planning Commission, which will go through a series of public hearings as well. And then ultimately, Planning Commission will make a recommendation to City Council. This is a series of workshops, so we are sort of starting big picture and diving deeper at each session. And so this session is more about where, more broadly, generally, we'd like to see density happen if we have to plan for it. And then next week will be more specific site identification. So the workshops that all the meetings that we've had are on the website, planlafayette.org. Under the Get Involved tab, if you scroll down, there's a title called Meetings, and they're all listed here with links to the materials as well as the recordings. So the meeting materials and notes that came out of the first discussion groups from the previous workshops are there or will be there, including the recordings. So as I mentioned, we're going from big picture to small, and we are at number 3. So how is this going to happen? We're going to work through our tables, and we are not going to change tables this time. We're going to do sort of a small part 1, which is, we're doing the introduction now. Then part 1 will be kind of group discussion about housing and where we think it might be best accommodated. And then the second part will be where your table host will be sharing their screen and running through the balancing act simulation. And then we'll come and do a report back to the group. And we should also, once each group submits their table, their plan from their table, we'll be able to show sort of an aggregation of the group as a whole. So feel free to stick around after the event to socialize. You can jump around from table to table. The event will end pretty abruptly at 9:15, but post activity pre 9:15, you're welcome to socialize. So this is a tool called Balancing Act. It is actually meant for municipal participatory budgeting. We've adjusted it so that it's more focused and related to housing. And so this is the screen that you will see from when your table host shares their screen. There'll be a balance bar at the top. The map will reflect the density based on the color. The color will increase based on the density that you choose using the plus and minus buttons in this section of the simulation. So you have the total number of units, where you'd like to place them, and then the map will be reflective of that plan. And then you won't be able to submit a plan that's not balanced. So you will need to get that balance bar into a green zone. We want to think generally about where housing should go and also about why. So keep those things in mind. And again, big picture. So I know many of you have been following along and know many of these terms, but in case you have no background, just quickly, RHNA is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, which is a certain number of units that's allocated by the state for each jurisdiction to plan for. It is actually allocated to the regional government and then allocated to the local governments. Buffer is a percentage over the RHNA, and that's sort of our just in case some of the areas that we identify are not actually built with housing. So we wouldn't have to sort of open the process up again and create a new plan. The opportunity sites are specific locations where development could occur. We have to demonstrate that there are sites that are viable for development. It doesn't mean that they would in fact get developed, but they are the designated opportunity sites. Again, we're planning for development. We are not developing. That will happen in the free market. Zoning is a set of regulations around land use and the physical development of a property. Density is the number of dwelling units per acre. That can take on many forms, and it depends on a variety of things, including unit size, height, and other things like aesthetics or just physical parameters. Frequently asked questions. In the chat, I sent the activity sheet. At the bottom of that sheet, there's this list of frequently asked questions. Those are also on the website, but they're linked right there. So if you're unfamiliar with what a housing element is, or any of these terms, feel free to use those links. So as we go through this, things to remember. We're working as a group tonight, but the tool will be publicly available, and so you'll be able to do your own version after this meeting. So just work together as a group this evening. There are a diversity of opinions, but I know we can find some common ground. Again, think big picture, right? So there are numbers associated with this. Those may or may not change based on a variety of factors, including whether or not we're able to find additional opportunity sites. So just think big picture, high level view, where in the city would we like to place housing and why? The BART site actually the state law requires 75 dwelling units per acre. So your table host will remind you that you're able to either set it at 0 or near 0 or 75 dwelling units per acre. This is an iterative process, and we may need to adjust. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through this. We're asking for your input. And again, this is not the first or last opportunity to participate. We will continue with the public outreach. Ground rules for working in a group: share the airtime, make sure that you allow other people to speak, and that you're listening as well as speaking. Listen to understand, not necessarily agree, and honor those time limits so that we do get through the activity this evening. As I mentioned, technical assistance. So staff will be in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. You can double-click on that table for a discussion with staff. You can type your question in the chat or the Q&A function on the right-hand side, and you can also contact tech support Benjamin Morrison at the email and phone number listed here. So with that, let's go ahead and get this conversation started. And I did notice that there were a couple of seats open at Blue Oak, or one seat open at Blue Oak, one seat open at Buckeye, 2 at Valley Oak, 1 at White Alder. So if you're not at one of those tables, you might try to go to one of those tables. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you had productive conversations. I know that it can be challenging to work through some of those technical difficulties, and then also the challenge of finding where the unit should go. So I am going to pull up a table host on the screen, and also Renata Robles, who will share her screen to show sort of the aggregation of all of the table host submissions. And then we'll have a brief overview from each of the table hosts to kind of give a summary of what happened at their tables. So if you are a table host and have not submitted yet, you please submit.
Hit the big final submit at the bottom, please.
So We all live here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we end up with a surplus, so I was thinking maybe we could work out a deal with another table to see what we could get for that.
Yeah.
Well, it was only 13 in the end, so it wasn't that much.
We had
I had
a
22
surplus of
cents.
4. We had 4, surplus of 4.
Wow.
We had 22 cents.
Gracious.
Does it look like, Renata, does it look like everyone has submitted? Just one moment. And maybe we can go ahead and just get started with the table host debrief. And then when we're ready, we can have Renata share screen, show the aggregation of those. So let's start with Matt. Are you ready? Matt, are you? Oh.
If everyone
I can
could
take it
mute
down
if you're
if you
not
want.
talking, I'm hearing some kind of background feedback. So if all the table hosts could just mute until it's your turn to talk, that'd be great.
Okay, so it looks like, Renata, you're sharing your screen. I know we were trying to get screenshots of all the tables. I'm not certain that we did, but maybe anybody who's willing to share their screen, if they did take a screenshot, we can do that. So Renata, do you want to go first, since you have your screen shared?
Was also successful in creating a housing plan. In our initial conversations, there was a lot of interest in centering in the downtown core. So the focus was kind of between Mount Diablo Boulevard and Highway 24. We did a little bit of upzoning at Lot 9 to kind of, take pressure off of other areas, and some up above Highway 24. So it was a great group. We had an interesting conversation. Definitely a lot to follow up on. But thank you all for your participation.
Okay, Matt, would you like to tell us what
And then we
you
can
want?
talk about that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I won't try to share my screen on this, but where we focused on was a significant increase on the BART parking lot. And the next significant increase west end of town, particularly across from the Oakwood, the De Silva property. We did increase density in the core downtown, mostly on the north side of Mount Diablo, less on the south side because you started getting into some of the residential areas. And we thought that would be less impactful at that point. And we ended up with just over 4 over for the plan. We met the plan. We had a great group, good discussions, and they were great to work with. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Jim.
Yeah, we had a great discussion. We spent a long time talking about BART. In the end, opted to put the 75 per unit there, per acre there. Ended up putting quite a bit on the west end, that parcel site across from Oakwood. I think we were at 75 an acre there too, figuring that the site might be able to accommodate that. And then we spent a lot of time talking about the downtown, focusing more on the area north of Mount Diablo Boulevard, in the end opting for adding density in that zone 1, which is on the western flank. I think we also did a slight upzone on the Deer Hill corridor, 15 units, I think, from the current 5. So the group had priorities with walkability, kind of maintaining the environment, and maintaining a sort of a small town feel. So doing things that are clustered around BART made sense for our group, and the access of the west end parcel to the freeway was sort of a factor why a good chunk of it went there too. It's a good group. Thanks all very much.
Thank you. Chris. Oh, you're muted.
We ended up at plus 0.22, and it was a great group. We talked about a lot of things that were related to housing, and that really helped to decide what the densities were. I was very surprised to see that even with some sort of gentle increases over what the zoning is right now, we were still able to come to the number. And we gave BART 75. We focused on the East End because we felt that it was a little undeveloped, even though there might be some displacement of current housing up on the East End, and a real need for transit if people are going to live there, live in that part of town. But we assigned the East End, the two sites there, 50, and 40 in the downtown core, because we felt that it was already, or my group felt that it was already congested. So we didn't want to make that too much worse. We also did not go big on the De Silva property. But we did, I think we put it at 45 or 40, I'm not quite sure. But we mostly talked about problems around this kind of development, mostly having to do with transit, and that it was a very interesting discussion. So I thank my group. I learned a lot.
Thank you. Josh.
Yeah, I had a group where we had a very spirited discussion about a diverse range of issues, including design potential, and that being a wild card, and the looking at corridors, and the looking at west versus east and other areas. And I will share my screen because I did snag a screenshot. And decided to do the BART increase. I don't know if we broke the rules. We put BART all the way up to 90 because we envisioned it as being a really nice conglomeration of businesses and mixed-use space and residential units right there next to the station, as a space for commuters and a space for residents. And we also envisioned De Silva as being somewhat of a node for the western side of the city. So looking at this as having the potential for mixed use, townhomes, maybe even other community facilities. And we bumped that up to, I want to say, 45 or 50. And then looking at how we can activate the space within the downtown core, close to transit, increasing walkability, increasing mixed use, as a means of promoting sales tax revenue. So increasing 3, I believe we increased 3 to 60, increased 4 to about 50, and 1 and 2 to 45, 50, and making this a nice band of walkable, mixed use, livable, enjoyable space.
Excellent, thank you. Next up would be Greg.
Thank you. I had a really good table. The views are in a broad spectrum, but there is a lot of agreement. We did discuss the values and kind of through lines themes that came out of the last session, the last workshop. But I think there was general consensus around there being opportunity north of the boulevard and south of the freeway to be able to accommodate more building mass and density. And also Oakwood being a large property and an opportunity both for housing and accommodating parks and recreation, potentially a sports field there, and maybe an opportunity for a little bit more density if the development could also accommodate that sports field. Put BART at the 75 units per acre, didn't go above that. And then we areas 3 and 4, for 4 and 13, just south of the core area. Also accommodate some additional growth there. We broke out with a little bit of a deficit, and so I took some liberties based on what the input was. So we did get to a 3-unit surplus, but we did discuss and fully acknowledge that the densities shown tonight are subject to change and going down as the GPAC goes into the next workshop and identification of the opportunity sites. So understanding like this may be overstating things at the outset and then honing it down further. But very good exercise, and I really appreciate the dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you. Jen Wakeman. Jen, are you on stage? Nancy's on stage. Why don't you go, Nancy?
So, my table also agreed with a lot of the other groups on upzoning the BART station to the maximum 75. And then further out on 8, also upzoning that, but not to the density like BART, just because it would be a nice transition to the residentials around it. So at 8, it's 35 dwelling units per acre. On the west end, they saw lot 9 as a great opportunity for increased density as well, and possibly rezoning so that the goods and services in the main core aren't impacted so much. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 were all upzone, not significantly, but enough so that there's more housing so that people can take advantage of the goods and services around. The only thing that the group didn't upzone was 13, just because there's already a lot of apartment units already there.
Thank you. Jen Wakeman.
Thanks. Let me get my screen up. Groups, we had similar thoughts around prioritizing access to the freeway for evacuations, walkability. We also spent some time talking about buffering the downtown from the freeway. So we based a lot of our allocations on those 3 priorities. We did upzone the BART area, section 7, but there was also a lot of discussion around having to, if that's to be done, acknowledging the consequences, such as where our resident commuters would park for BART, and the need for more bike parking. We also talked about, maybe the rental scooters or bikes at opposite ends of town in the central part of town, so that we really encourage our visitors to the city and our residents to use alternate modes of transportation to vehicles. And then we did increase the area 9, the one across from Oakwood, the De Silva property. I think we recommended 50 units per acre. And again, because of freeway access, there was a lot of discussion also about not congesting Moraga Road further, about how the the neighborhoods farther from the freeway in an incident with an evacuation would have a hard time getting out. And so we really talked about centralizing our housing around the freeway points.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lisa Martin.
Sorry, Sarah, did you say me?
Yes.
So, you broke up. So we had a great discussion at my table, and I want to thank them for their patience with my my noviceness at running a workshop table. But the important things that came out in conversation were the walkability factor, the closeness to public transit, and how that would tie into the affordability factor as well. And we focused most of our increase, I believe, to the north of Highway 24, the BART area, and north the Deer Hill Road, keeping in mind that as the density occurs, if we kept it to one side of Mount Diablo Boulevard and that the north side, it would be less of a tunnel effect aesthetically. And then one comment takeaway that I had from a participant was just we were taking looks at the examples of what density per unit, the units per acre, and how that looked. And as the density increases, the design of the development becomes so much more impactful, and when large scale developments come into play. So keep that in mind. And that's it.
Thank you. And Stephen.
All right, our group had a really great discussion as well. Brought a lot of issues that are worth considering when we're going through the figuring out where to put the housing, and a lot of those were traffic and fire prevention, and just working around those things, as well as the downtown and being close to schools and the impact of that. So overall, what was discussed more so was to push a lot of the building to the west end where there's less traffic, and also utilizing the BART parking lot significantly, and then adding a little bit in the downtown area as well to supplement. But it was a big focus on the west end and the BART parking lot as areas to increase.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm taking notes on all of this, and I think that's helpful in adding additional background and context for each of the actual numbers and maps. So thank you all for participating, and for the table hosts for taking those good notes. And then I don't know, Renata, did you want to share the aggregated data with the group? So we could just kind of see like kind of all of that squished together. Oh, perhaps she is.
I believe there was one more table that did not get to share yet.
I am so sorry.
I'm gonna grab his map, and then I'll move to the aggregate. Just one moment.
Jonathan, are you on the
He's not on stage right now, it seems.
Oh, let me get him on here. Oh,
here I am.
Jonathan.
Hey. So I had a great group. Thanks for everyone for participating. Yeah, familiar faces and some new ones. So it's great to see people come back a second time around and also see new people. I had 2 iterations of the map. So we kind of had an initial discussion. We went into details about values about housing and had a pretty long conversation, then did a take on the map, and then we started considering best practices, and that's how we ended up at the final one. So let's see. Okay, so yeah, our initial map focused the density heavily on the West End and Oakwood. So if you look at 912, yeah, just 912, and I think 7 as well, the first iteration, we increased all those with the exception of BART. BART was 75 dwelling units per acre, but 912, those all went up to 100 dwelling units per acre. And so the preference was keeping density initially, keeping it farther away from single family. So keeping it away from area 13, area 6, keeping it away from Deer Hill if possible. But as we started talking about the best practices of having development closer to goods and services and to transit, that's when the density started being sprinkled through 3, 5, and taken away from 9. So at the end, we had 3 and 5, 45 dwelling units per acre. 7 was 75 dwelling units per acre. That's BART. And then Oakwood had 85 dwelling units per acre. During the conversation, there was interest in keeping density away from 4 and 13 because of Moraga Road and St. Mary's Road already being heavily impacted. And also wanting to keep it away from 4 and 13 to decrease traffic collisions to kids accessing the Lafayette Elementary School. And towards the beginning of the conversation, we had a speaker highlight the importance of affordability and diversity when it came to housing. That is all.
Great, thank you. And I also forgot Diana. I am so sorry. I got my second vaccine today. I'm going to blame on that.
I didn't take it personally. It's okay. We had a great group, and a lot of the things were very much reiterated, specifically about the desire to move density above Mount Diablo Boulevard and not increase density below that because of for 2 reasons. One is because of more residential areas and because of the traffic concerns on Moraga. The group agreed to put the development above 24 and putting the BART station at 75 units to the acre. And I don't remember what the number was. I think it was 35 for the Deer Hill corridor. And the De Silva property would be at 40, thinking that it's a huge site. It would be a great place for a nice little development that, during an evacuation, people from that area could get on their freeway easier than certain people in the downtown. The 3 things that really rose to the top in terms of concerns was, one is, the group generally agreed with development above 24, Highway 24, but with the caveat that whatever is proposed there is vetted or worked through with CAL FIRE and local fire folks to talk about what is the right kind of development in a place that's also a high fire danger area. Secondly, concerns about BART potentially allowing the reduction of parking if their sites are redeveloped. And lastly, whatever is provided in terms of any new housing we should be talking to the school board to make sure that the impacts on local schools are distributed more evenly than just having all the housing units in one quick location. And that's my screenshot right there, except the left end. Anyway, that's it.
Great. Thank you. Did I forget anyone else, Renata?
Get to share?
Yes.
And Jim, yes. They were the first group. Okay. I think that's everybody.
Great. And then I'll hand it over to you for the aggregation.
Thank you. So I'm just going to let this map. This map is kind of pulling from everybody's table or everybody's maps, everyone's housing plans, and it looks like we all got to a housing plan, which is awesome. We even had a little bit of a surplus. So that's great. And I was looking at this earlier and there's a little bit more differentiation across, but you know what? I think 7 and 8 and 9 are much paler than the rest of them. Oh, here we go. So it seems like most people did elect to upzone BART. And I think that's a very telling trend, as well as these kind of these areas between Highway 24 and Mount Diablo Boulevard. And it looks like some folks opted as well to do number 4, but south of Mount Diablo Boulevard, and number 9 looks a little bit more densified. So now we can we can go zone by zone and see that there was a spread of groups. Sorry, moving too fast. There was a kind of even spread across the different areas. So looks like 2 groups opted to change a lot of them. Yeah, areas, and we can see that the greatest increase was north of Highway 24, likely because of BART. And then it does seem like a lot of the West End areas did get upzoned. And here we can see, again, how the West End was upzoned, and a lot of folks left the East End alone. It's kind of a hard spread because it's across the table, but as folks start to on Engagement HQ, we'll kind of get more granular data of where folks want to see that density.
Sarah, can you share when people can expect to be able to get online and start playing with Balancing Act themselves?
So I think it should be live actually tomorrow on Engagement HQ. So you can go to the planlafayette.org website, and then on the right-hand side, there's a link to Engagement HQ, and it'll take you to that site. And you'll click on housing, and you'll be able to take the survey or to do the activity yourself and submit it individually. And then we'll also take that data and aggregate it as well, and provide that to the General Plan Advisory Committee as they move forward and make decisions. Excellent. So it looks like we only have about 7 more minutes before the meeting ends, and I'd love to give you a chance to speak with your friends and neighbors. Thank you again so much for attending, for participating. Please encourage everyone in your networks to participate. Thank you for the table hosts. Really appreciate it. I know it's a lot of work to kind of take everyone's opinions and make sure everyone is heard. So thank you again. This video and the results will be posted on the website as well. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.